What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome back to another episode of the NBA Talk Podcast for the week of April the 6th, 2017, all the way to April the 13th, 2017. I'm your host, Hani, and before we get started with this week's episode, I would like to apologize to you guys for my lack of consistency for the past few weeks or so. I don't know if you noticed, but my goal with this podcast was to try to upload weekly and try to get you guys content every single week. But recently I've had a bit of trouble managing that because of my job and my school and everything. It just kept piling up. And, some days you see me uploading on Wednesdays. One week, you upload Monday and next Friday. So it's been difficult, no doubt, but I apologize for that, and I'll try my level best to be more consistent. I just need to figure out a day and a time that will work best for me. So I'm sort of kind of experimenting at this point and just seeing what works best for me. But with all that out of the way, on this episode of the podcast, we're not going to be covering any news. No, because now, as of today, when I'm filming, which is April the 13th, 2017, we are officially in the NBA playoffs, which means this Saturday, April the 15th, the NBA playoffs will finally begin. So now, on this episode of the NBA Talk Podcast, we will be previewing and predicting the 2017 NBA playoffs. So, without any further ado, let's get started. Alright guys, so I'm going to have to be brutally honest with you guys. I've written zero notes on any of these games because I feel that to give you guys the best possible information, I need to be genuine. I can't just script what I'm going to say because that's not legitimately me, because my mind could change completely. So I'm going to be just reading off each first round matchup and giving my prediction of what will happen. So with that all said, we're going to start off in the Western Conference matchups. And the first matchup for the Western Conference is the number 1 seeded Golden State Warriors taking on the number 8 seeded Portland Trail Blazers. Now, this is one of those matchups where not many people are going to be really excited about because people think it's a pretty weak matchup. It's a matchup that shouldn't be even happening, but it's happening anyways. So, as we all know, the Golden State Warriors have had a fantastic season, going 67-15. They've had their fair share of ups, especially adding Kevin Durant to an already good team. You can see what is happening now, where the team is just 10 times better. They blow out teams a lot often. They are much better offensively and defensively. They're just overall one of the best team in the league right now because they have 4 great players on their roster. Plus they have a system that works and they've been winning games. And on the other hand, the Portland Trail Blazers, they're a team that started off the season very slow. They started off the season very disappointing, and midway through the season they sort of picked it up and they made it into the NBA playoffs. So if I were to predict this game, if I were to predict what I think will happen, I think this series, based on what we know from the Golden State Warriors and the Portland Trail Blazers, I think this game will go 5 games, and I think the Warriors will take it in 5. Because, let's be honest, I'm being honest here. The Portland Trail Blazers have been kind of disappointing this year. After the successful season we saw last year from them, where they competed hard, Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum seemed like to be the next big thing. We expected a lot more from them, and they were not able to produce. And I think mainly that's because of the, support, the lack thereof support that they have, behind CJ and Dame. But I just think that in this scenario, Portland is just way too overmatched by Golden State. There's just no possible way. CJ and Dame can do their thing. They can match Curry and Thompson, but who's in a matchup with Durant? Who's going to contain Durant? Who's going to contain Draymond? You know, there's all these different variables with the Warriors that I don't think Portland's equipped to deal with right now. And I know they got Yusuf Nurkic, and he's been doing great for them, but, you know, I mean, there's not really much I can say. I mean, you already know this is exactly what having Kevin Durant on the Warriors means. This team is just way too OP for the Portland Trailblazers. And that's why I think this series will end in 5 games, because, you know, I think the Warriors will ultimately win the series, but I do think Damian Lillard will try to lead his team to maybe 1 victory over the Warriors. So I'm going to go with 5 games, then the Golden State Warriors will take it, just because they're overmatched, man. There's no other reasoning I can give, because the Golden State Warriors are just clearly better offensively and defensively than the Portland Trailblazers. So the next matchup in the Western Conference that we're going to talk about is the number 2 seeded San Antonio Spurs taking on the number 7 seed Memphis Grizzlies. Now this is a very interesting matchup, mainly because you're pitting together 2 teams that play very similarly. The Spurs are a team that focuses more on the defensive, playing great defense and playing solid to average offense. And the same thing with the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies have great, strong defense and average to, good offense. So, like, offensively, you can see the Spurs rank 7th in the league with offensively, and they rank 1st in the league defensively, whereas the Grizzlies rank 7th defensively, and they rank 19th in offensively. So, with that being said, I think this will be a tough series. I think this will be a challenge for the San Antonio Spurs, mainly because, you're playing a team that plays just like you. And when one of the key aspects of playoff matchups is defense, because you need to be able to contain your opponent. It doesn't matter if you have a high-powered offense or not. As long as you can contain your opponent and make sure they don't beat you, you can end up winning series like that. And I think that's where Memphis is going to have sort of that edge over San Antonio, because it will force San Antonio to up their game, and it will, offensively especially. And this is where I think a guy like Kawhi Leonard will need to step up here in order to help the Spurs to win. Because we've seen how good Kawhi is defensively, but we need him to truly show that not only is he strong defensively, but he's strong offensively as well to carry his team to victory. And this is where the Spurs have to be stronger. I mean, they already are a better offensive team, but they have to be even better because they're playing up against a top 5 defense in Memphis. So you have to really play hard on both ends of the floor. So I do think this will be a struggle for the San Antonio Spurs. As for the Memphis Grizzlies, they really have nothing to lose here. They're sort of an underrated team because they play grit and grind basketball. I mean, that's who the Memphis Grizzlies are. A team that will fight hard, a team that will scrap, a team that will do all the dirty work to get the win. And that's what makes them very dangerous in the playoff scenarios, where they will be physical with you. They will, impose their will. Even with 24 guys they had on the roster last year, they were able to make the playoffs. So this team is very, very scary. With that being said, if I had to give a prediction for this series, I'm gonna say the Spurs will take the series in 6 games or 7 games. I don't think the series will be less than that. I think it will be a long series. I think it will be a grinded out series. I think if Memphis can produce offensively, I think this will go to a 7-game series. But if San Antonio imposes their will and, starts off the series strong, I really believe this will end in 6 games with Memphis putting up a big and major fight. But overall, man, this is a very compelling series, man. This is a series that not many people are sleeping on, but I'm truly finding it to be interesting as I dive deeper into the series itself. The next series we're going to talk about is arguably the biggest and the most talked about series that we're going to have to talk about. And that is the Houston Rockets, the number 3 seed in the Western Conference, against the number 6 seeded Oklahoma City Thunder. The reason why this is such a special matchup is because you're basically pitting together the 2 top MVP candidates of the season against each other. Now, these two have been battling it out. Russell Westbrook and James Harden have been battling it out all season to determine who is the better player, who is deserving of the MVP award, who has been the better player this season. And what better way to figure that information out than to have them together, put them together against each other in a first round best of 7 series, and who can lead their team to victory. And that's the most compelling storyline here. Just seeing who Harden and Westbrook going back, just grinding it out. Now, for me personally, Houston has shocked a lot of people. I mean, I'll be quite honest. I did not expect Houston to be this good. They were the number 3 seed in the Western Conference. They won around 55 games this season, which is honestly impressive. They have arguably one of the top offenses in the league. They have the second best offense in the league, and their defense has been solid too. I believe they're like 19th, they're 18th in defensive rating. So Houston is in a solid position right now. Sure, they may not be able to defend the ball really well, but Houston has a really good offense that can probably outpower anybody. And that is the scary part about the Houston Rockets, where they've been just fantastic offensively. James Harden has thrived in the system. He has a great support system behind him. So Houston is a very, very good team. As for the Thunder have been just carried by Russell Westbrook this season. It's no surprise the Thunder are literally go as far as Russell Westbrook goes. If Russell Westbrook can produce at an extremely high level in the playoffs, then I expect big things from the Thunder, because right now they're ranked 17th defensively, and they're 17th offensively, sorry, and they are, let's see where they are. They are 10th defensively. So Oklahoma City's pretty solid on defense, but again, their offense always relies on Russell Westbrook, so which I think will be easy for Houston to trap. As far as the series goes, I think this will be a 6-game series with eventually Houston taking the win. The reason why I'm saying Houston is just because Houston is a far better roster constructed than Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City is literally just a bunch of guys put together around Russell Westbrook, where Houston is a system that's built around James Harden's strength. So James Harden loves to kick the ball, he loves to pat. Giving James Harden shooters to work with is great for him when he can drive and then kick, and it really just helps him thrive and makes the team overall better, because everyone fits together very well. So overall, from that point of view, I just think that will be the deciding factor. And also that Houston's offense is just much better than Oklahoma City. His defense can handle. So I just think that Houston will have the advantage here, and I think Oklahoma City will put up a fight, but eventually I think they'll go down in 6 games. And finally, the last series for the Western Conference, we have the 4th-seeded Los Angeles Clippers taking on the 5th-seeded Utah Jazz. Now, this is also a pretty interesting one, as these teams were virtually tied as far as record goes at 51 and 31. And LA got the tiebreaker, so they were able to get the 4th seed, and Utah got the 5th seed. Now, what makes this matchup so interesting is the stipulations that are added on top of what these matches have put in place. So for the Clippers, this is go big or go home time. I mean, they've had a very underwhelming season where they've literally been a whole step behind everybody in the upper echelon of the Western Conference. They haven't proven themselves to be the elite Western Conference teams. So from that regard, I really have my doubts with the Clippers, and this playoff run will determine whether the Clippers' big three will stay or will be broken apart. Now, I've been on the record saying that I think they should break apart because they have no chance in the Western Conference, but when healthy, they are a solid team. They are a very solid team. With Chris Paul, when he's healthy, he's one of the best point guards in the league. Blake Griffin, when he's actually focused and willing to play hard, he's a great power forward defensively. And DeAndre, we know what DeAndre brings. defensively and what he brings offensively as well. So this team is also, and then Coach Doc Rivers is also running that team. So this team has the personnel to go far in the playoffs. But it's the matter of will they or will they not. Now, on the other hand, the Utah Jazz were a big surprise because last year they got snubbed from the playoffs by one game, literally one game. They were fighting for that 8th seed, and now they jumped all the way up to the 5th seed in the conference, which has been really, really impressive by the Utah Jazz. Now, I will admit, I'm impressed by the Jazz. I'm really, really impressed by what they've done this season. They've been one of the best defensive teams in the league. I think they also have the 12th best offense in the league. So they are a solid team, especially when it comes to defense. Now, as far as the concern I have for the Jazz, I think their injuries may play a factor. Because some of the Jazz players like George Hill and other players of that sort have missed multiple games this season. And I think the injuries might play a part into their success in the playoffs, especially and also because this is the first time they're making it in the postseason in a while. So this group of guys, when George Hill, Rodney Hood, Gordon Hayward, these guys are getting their first sort of taste of playoff basketball. So they will be clearly under pressure to perform. They will be in a situation where they need to learn on the fly. So from that point of view, if I had to predict where the series will go, I think this will be the Clippers winning this in 7 games. Because these teams are basically matched evenly. They are very, very close. I mean, the Clippers have one of the best offenses, a top 4 offense. They are the 4th best offense in the league. And the Jazz have a top 3 defense. So they're basically even as far as what they can do on either end of the floor. Now, it's really just comes down for me experience. The Clippers have been into the playoffs. They've won series. They've gone deep into the playoffs, and they've had veteran leadership as well. So that's something that I just think trumps what the Utah Jazz has to do. And personally, I think the Jazz should not be just discouraged if they lose in the first round because they really have nothing to lose here. Nobody expected them to be there, and that's their first time being there. So by getting knocked out in the first round by a good team in the Los Angeles Clippers isn't necessarily a bad thing for the Jazz. But if it was me, I think the veteran leadership will play a factor into this series. But that doesn't mean that this won't be an easy series for the Clippers because they need to seriously prove themselves against a very hungry and young team in the Utah Jazz. But overall, if I had to predict this series, I think this is ending in 7 games in favor of the Los Angeles Clippers. Those were the first round matchups for the Western Conference. Next, we're going to move on to the second round of the playoffs, in which the first bracket will put up the Golden State Warriors against the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, this is a big rivalry that would be going on in my hypothetical bracket right here, because these two teams clearly hate each other. They hate playing with each other. But if there's a team that can match up with the Warriors, I think it's the Clippers, because the Clippers are a team that's able to play physical with the Warriors, a team that's able to, be on the same level psychologically as the Warriors. And I think they will have an advantage. They will be able to sort of back the Warriors up a little bit. However, I don't think it would be enough for the Warriors to not overcome it because they clearly have the better roster. And the Clippers haven't shown that sort of team aspect this whole season where they can all come together and beat this team. They haven't beaten this team in a while, especially fully healthy. So I think if I had to pick, I think the Golden State Warriors would be winning this second round series in 6 games. I think the Clippers will put up a fight. I think they will try their level best to take down the Warriors. I think they'll take the Warriors 2 games. But ultimately, I think the Warriors will come out on top just because they have the better roster and they're just the overall better team. I mean, the Clippers are solid, but they're not at that level because, as I mentioned, they're a step behind Houston, San Antonio, and all those other upper echelon teams rather than being at the forefront where we expected them to be talent-wise. So I think that the Warriors will be advancing in 6 games. The next series would involve the Houston Rockets taking on the San Antonio Spurs. Now, the Spurs, and the one thing that's going to play a factor here is the three-point shot. Now, Houston loves the three-point shot. They love shooting the three ball. However, San Antonio has the best defense in the league. And one of the things San Antonio does really well is they protect the three-point line. And I think that will play a major factor. I think San Antonio, with their defense and being able to, move the ball and take advantage of Houston's weaker defense, I think they will have a clear advantage over the Houston Rockets by being just the overall better team on both ends of the floor, which in turn would lead me to say that this will be, a six-game series, which will end in favor of the San Antonio Spurs, mainly because they have the advantage. They're a better defensive team. They can defend the three-point line. They can take away Houston's best weapon, which is the three, and they can take it, and then because they're having stops defensively, that leads to more opportunities offensively, and since Houston has a weaker defense, they can take advantage of that as well. So based on those facts, I think San Antonio will be advancing to the Western Conference Finals. Which brings me to the Western Conference Finals, and here we're going to have the Golden State Warriors going up against the San Antonio Spurs. Now this is a very interesting matchup, as this is basically the top two teams in the Western Conference. Now this is do or die for the Golden State Warriors here, because they need to get to the NBA Finals. If they don't get into the NBA Finals, it's going to be a disappointment for everyone. Now, see, as talented as the Warriors are, they have one major flaw, and that's their shooting. Now, when Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson aren't hitting shots, they aren't effective, which means when they're not hitting shots, it affects the rest of the team. We've seen this in previous games before, and it is a major factor. And I mentioned the same thing with Houston. San Antonio is a really good team that likes to take away the three-point shot, and they're really good at taking away the three. And I think that will play a factor into the series. I think Golden State and San Antonio going head-to-head is going to be a little bit in favor of San Antonio, because they can take away the three-pointer from Golden State. They can take away Golden State's three-pointers, which is one of their biggest weapons. And another thing is that San Antonio has more interior presence. They have strong guys like Pau Gasol, LaMarcus Aldridge, and David Lee, and all of these other players who are physical inside the paint and who can take advantage of the Warriors' lack of interior presence. They don't have anybody down low who can compete. They're sure Draymond is there. Draymond can do only so much. He can't take over the series, and he can't control three strong, big guys who can impose their will on Draymond. So I think the Spurs will have those advantages in their favor. However, the Warriors, still being a good defensive team in their own right, they're still a solid team. I believe they're top 5 in defensive ranking. They're actually second best team in defensive rankings. So they're no scrub, especially on the defensive end. So they can also pressure San Antonio on their offense as well. However, if I were to predict this series, I think this will be a tough series, where I think this will go 7 games. But I ultimately see the San Antonio Spurs coming out on top of this one. I know, as shocking as this may be, that I'm picking the Spurs, and it's not that I'm being biased on the Warriors, against the Warriors or anything. I'm not. I'm saying this based on the fact that the Spurs have a greater advantages over the Warriors in being able to take advantage of their weak points. I think if it came down to a Game 7, I think San Antonio, with the experience of Greg Popovich, with their style of play, with their strong defense and strong interior presence, I think they will have the advantage over the Warriors, in which I think the Spurs will take them down in 7 games and advance to the NBA Finals. So that was the Western Conference. Now we're going to move on to the Eastern Conference predictions. So the first series is the Boston Celtics taking on the Chicago Bulls. Now, one thing I want to mention about Boston, they've had a solid season. They were able to capture the number 1 seed due to the Cavs' struggles. Now, one thing I want to say about Boston, a lot of people are hyping up Boston, saying that they're a great team, that they're going to be going to the NBA Finals. Now, for those people, I want to let them know, relax. Boston may be playing solid, but let's just look deeper into the numbers here. Without Isaiah Thomas on the floor, Boston is literally one of the worst teams in the league. Because Isaiah Thomas does so much for this team. I mean, just look at them. Let's see. They're 8th in offensive rating, and then they are, let's see, okay, very low. They are 12th in defensive ranking. So they're a solid team, but they're not a great team where you're saying that, oh, they're going to make it to the NBA Finals. And this is where I really just don't like the hype that Boston's getting, because people are forgetting that there's teams like Toronto who are in top 10 in both offense and defensive efficiency who are much better than Boston. So from that regard, I don't believe the fact that Boston is the number 1 seed. I just see it in such a way that Cleveland gave up the number 1 seed to Boston due to their struggles. However, this is an interesting series between the Celtics and the Bulls. Now, the Bulls were lucky and they were able to get into the NBA playoffs. Now, this is where a lot of people are going to be maybe against me, but Boston has been playing good. They've been playing well, but I don't think they'll be able to last when the defense starts to pick up, especially in the playoffs. Isaiah Thomas has been having his way all season, but he is the primary offense for this team. Without him, this team has zero offense. Not to mention they're not great defensively, which means that a veteran team like the Chicago Bulls could be able to pull up the upset. Because, you got guys like Dwayne Wade, who's been to countless playoff games. Jimmy Butler has been establishing himself as a great two-way threat. You also have Rajon Rondo, who is also no scrub when it comes to playoff basketball. So from that point of view, I think the Bulls really have a lot of weapons to throw, a lot of tricks to throw at the younger and less experienced Boston Celtics. And let's not forget, the Celtics have not yet won a playoff series with this core. It's been 3 years with this young core, and they haven't been able to win a series. So let's keep that in mind. So if I were to predict this series, as much as I think Chicago will upset, I think Boston's talent and I think their overall style of play will be a little bit too much. But I do think the Bulls will pose a challenge. So for me, I think Boston will take this in 7 games. I think Boston will win in 7 because Chicago just won't have enough to win it all, after 6 games. And I don't think they'll have what it takes to win it all. So for me, if I had to, I think Boston will win in 7 games. However, I don't rule out the possibility of Chicago upsetting Boston in 7 as well. The next series is Cleveland versus Indiana. Another interesting series because this is a series that is pitting LeBron James once again against Paul George. Now these two had their share of rivalries in the Eastern Conference Finals a few years ago, where George and the Pacers were leading against James and the Miami Heat. This time, George is playing LeBron on the Cavs team. Now, Paul George and the Indiana Pacers have recently found their groove after re-signing Lance Stevenson. They've been playing solid basketball. As far as this game goes, I just think the Cavs, especially with LeBron playing at his best, we don't know if he's playing his best or not, but in theory, if LeBron's playing his best, that means that the Pacers won't have a chance to win, just because LeBron is just way too much to handle in playoff form. So if I were to predict this series, I think this series is going to go in maybe, I'm going to say maximum 6. But if I were to predict, I think 5 games, and I think the Cavs will win 5 games, with the Pacers win 1 or 2 if Paul George gets hot and just starts dominating the floor. Now, there is a concern with the Cavs defensively, but I really think that when LeBron James steps up in the playoffs, I think he is ultimately he is the best player, the leader in the world. He's one of the best players in the world. So I won't hold this past LeBron. So I think the Cavs will advance to the next round in 5 games. Next, we're going to talk about the Toronto Raptors, the 3rd seed, taking on the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, this is an interesting series, as Toronto has found some resurgence after acquiring Serge Ibaka and PJ Tucker and getting Kyle Lowry back. The Raptors look complete now. And as far as roster-wise in the East, I think the Raptors have one of the most balanced rosters in the entire conference. I think they have the best balanced roster from top to bottom. Now, as far as this series goes, the Raptors have tons of playoff experience. They have a solid roster, the top 10 offense, top 10 defense. And I think they're going to carry that into the playoffs. However, for Milwaukee, they've been finding their stride. I mean, Giannis is going to be a big problem for the Raptors. But at the same time, the Bucks are also very inexperienced in the playoffs. They don't have a lot of playoff experience, and they don't have a lot of other weapons to sort of hurt Toronto besides maybe length defensively. So from that standpoint, I think Toronto will walk out of the series. I think Toronto will win in maximum 6 games. I think that's really where it is, because the Bucks won't be an easy team to take down, but I do think that the lack of experience will come into play and Toronto will be able to take this series. And finally, the last series is Washington versus Atlanta. Atlanta is a weird team because one day they look like a great team, the next day they look like a shit team. So yeah, and then there's Washington. Wall and Beal have been playing amazing basketball. They've been leading the Wizards to one of their better seasons, and for me, I just think the Hawks aren't ready to legitimately beat someone in the playoffs. So for me, I'm going with the Wizards. I'm going with the Wizards in 5, just because I don't think the Hawks will have any answer to John Wall and Bradley Beal, and also how great that team has been playing recently. So now we're going to move on to the second round matchups, where we're going to have Boston versus Washington. This is a good matchup because they're putting together 2 of the best teams in the Eastern Conference against each other. Boston has been solid, but at the same time, I think Washington will have the advantage, just because defensively, Washington is, where is Washington? Actually, defensively, Washington is actually worse than Boston. Washington is ranked 20th defensively, and Boston is ranked 12th. So for me, I personally just think that the Boston Celtics are a better team because of the depth, because Boston is a more deeper team than Washington. Washington, one of the biggest concerns of the season was that they don't have enough depth on their bench unit, and I think that will really come to hurt them, especially in the second round of the playoffs when you're taking on a team like Boston. So for me, I think, again, this will be a grind-out series for the Celtics, but I think they'll pull it off in 7 games and advance to the Eastern Conference Finals. The next second-round matchup would be the Toronto Raptors and the Cleveland Cavaliers, and this is the rematch of last year's Eastern Conference Finals. I think the Raptors are probably one out of the Wizards, Celtics, and Raptors. I think the Raptors have the best chances of beating the Cavs, just because their roster is more equipped to do so. They'll be able to compete with some of the things Cleveland can throw at them. However, I really think that playoff LeBron is a LeBron that's really going to be really hard to stop. But I think if I had to pick, based on the numbers right now, based on how the way the Raptors played and how the Cavs are playing right now, I'm going to have to, if I'm going to go based off numbers, I'm going to say Toronto is going to be winning this, because Toronto is clearly playing better basketball. Cleveland's ranked 22nd defensively, whereas Toronto is a top 5 offense and a top 10 defense. So from that standpoint, you can already see that the Raptors have a clear advantage, especially offensively versus Cavs' lack of defense. But this is playoff LeBron we're talking about here, so for me, I'm going to go, if I'm going numbers, I'm saying Toronto in 7, but if I'm going based on what I've seen from playoff basketball, I'm going to go with LeBron and the Cavs in 7 games. I think this will be a hard series for LeBron to come out of, but I think he'll pull it off in 7 games. Now, finally, the Eastern Conference Finals, putting up the Boston Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I really think that the Celtics won't have any answer for LeBron, because LeBron, when he's in the conference finals, he knows it's game time. He knows this is his ticket to the NBA Finals, and he has to punch it in. So I just think LeBron and the Cavs will roll through the Celtics, just because it's LeBron. LeBron is better than the Celtics, and we saw like a week or 2 ago how LeBron was able to dismantle the Celtics very easily. So I think that will happen again, and I think the Cavs will win this series in 6 games, because LeBron will be able to lead his guys to victory. Which means that the NBA Finals would be the Cleveland Cavaliers taking on the San Antonio Spurs. Now, the Spurs have usually given problems to LeBron James, and I think based on how LeBron's team has been playing defensively, and I think the Spurs, with the momentum they'd be carrying by beating the Warriors, I think the Spurs will have the advantage over the Cavs just because defensively they're a better team. Popovich knows how to handle LeBron, will be able to strategize LeBron, and Kawhi will be locking down LeBron James, so that'll be another difficult threat. And yeah, I just think the Spurs overall have the advantage. So if I had to choose, this will be a grinded out series again, but for the NBA Finals to win the championship, I predict that the San Antonio Spurs will win the NBA championship in a 7-game series. So there you have it, folks. That was my breakdown of the NBA playoff. This is what I predict will happen. This is my preview of what will happen. Let me know in the comment section down below. Do you agree with what I'm saying? Do you not? Do you hate my guts? Do you think I'm retarded? Just let me know. I would love to hear what your thoughts are. Let me know what your bracket would be. This is what I would predict. I predict that the Spurs would come out of the West and the Cavs would come out of the East, but eventually the Spurs will come out on top and be 2017 NBA champions. So, yeah. If you guys enjoyed this video, leave this video a like. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to this channel for more content like this. And follow me on social media, my Twitter, my Facebook. You guys know what to do. And as always, guys, I'm Hani from NBA Talk, and I'll see you all in the next episode of the NBA Talk podcast. Thank you so much for watching.